Is Gon Freecss a monster? Hey, and welcome back to my channel. That's what we'll be talking about today, and I want to do a slightly more formal setup for this video, as we've been pretty casual so far. Oh, this? Well, I thought I'd dress for the occasion. Now, I have talked about Hunter x Hunter in previous videos, and there's a reason for that. It's really caught my attention over the last few years, and I think there's almost an infinite amount of things we can talk about. One thing I have neglected to talk about in detail, however, is the main character, Gon Freecss. And that's who we'll be drawing today as well. So stick around to the end of the video to see the finished piece, and there is two versions of it actually, which I'll explain at the end. And before we begin, can I just say, spoiler warnings for Hunter x Hunter. Gon is a strange character. He's first introduced to us in a very typical manner as a young boy who's going to embark on a grand adventure and get up to shenanigans. Standard shown in anime fare. And that holds true in a way throughout the first arc, that being the Hunter exam. However, anyone paying attention to the show in any kind of way will start to notice some odd things. Violence and death become prevalent almost immediately upon entering the exam, but Gon doesn't seem to notice much, and so neither does the viewer. And here I want to talk a little bit about story structure. If we conceive of a story in terms of a shape, one of the most common ways of writing would be that of the pyramid. We start out with a narrow focus, and as the story goes on, that focus expands outwards as we learn more about the world, about the characters, and about the rules of said world. Gon acts as the POV character, or point of view character, and we experience the world through his eyes at first. A lot has been said about how Gon exhibits psychopathic or even sociopathic traits, and I don't want to reiterate anyone here, so please go watch the likes of Alexander's YouTube channel or Nen World Review on the subject. They make really great videos analysing the characters, and I would really recommend their content. And since Gon's psychopathic tendencies have him ignore a lot of the violence against people who aren't in his immediate circle, we experience it in a very dispassionate way unless it affects Gon personally, such as when Hisoka potentially is going to kill Kurapika and Leorio. Then we start to get invested as viewers. And going back to the pyramid for a second, this story structure is very applicable to the likes of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey narrative that a lot of the more typical shonen protagonists tend to go on, where they grow and become stronger protagonists by the end of the story. Writer Jane Halsall notes this when she talks about there being 5 main stories that anime tends to cover. Hunter x Hunter incidentally appears to follow the 4th at first, which she says is a rite of passage, the fight or plight of a child becoming a person, or a passage to becoming a better, healthier human being. Although, as I've hinted at, this doesn't last for long. If we then fast forward to the York New City arc, we begin to follow Kurapika, who has a more typical view of the world, shall we say. Kurapika condemns the Phantom Troop's actions completely. The murderers who don't care about who they hurt or kill along the way, as long as they get what they want, and in some cases, they have fun doing it. Kurapika is out for revenge for his clan whom the troop wiped out. They're presented as monsters, and so we view them as monsters. However, when Gon and Killua begin to interact with the troop more, we see a different side to them. Gon challenges them on a fundamental level when he rages at Nobunaga for shedding tears over his friend Uvo's death when he couldn't shed tears for all the people that they've murdered. I don't want to recap events too much here, but in the end Gon and Killua end up doing a kindness to Pakanoda, another member of the troop, because she showed loyalty and caring to her friends in the troop. This doesn't change the fact that Pakanoda has been an accessory to many of the atrocities that the group have committed. But this one virtue that Paku displayed was enough to soften the boys' views towards her. After this, their interactions with the troop become a bit more chilled. It's this, Gon's openness to new experiences and his endless curiosity. It's shown as a positive trait earlier in the series, but we get some foreshadowing of this darkness whenever Zeppile appraises him in episode 48 of the 2011 anime, saying he's not concerned whether something is good or bad. If something impresses him, he doesn't start judging whether it's good or bad, which means he's walking a fine line. This is exemplified later in the Great Island arc after his training with Beanolt, a mass murderer. Instead of turning him over to the authorities or even taking retribution for all of his victims, Gon simply thanks him for helping him and Killua get stronger. He did them a favour, so he should just go on his merry way. Gon never even considers that Beanolt might just go back to murdering people. He's happy that he was able to advance his skills. If we again look at the pyramid, at a young age Gon has been exposed to a very particular slice of life, and his worldview has grown to show that. He's grown up on a small island and he's now walking the path of a hunter. A profession steeped in violence and danger, and he's approaching it with a carefree attitude that a 12-year-old would have and going about their day. This has become his new normal, and he's applying a child's selfish logic to extremely dangerous situations where people die all around him. As long as he and his friends are fine, who cares if that dude over there dies? He just wasn't relevant enough, right? And here we come to what could be the crux of the analysis. Academic Susan Napier writes about what she calls the monstrous adolescent in Japanese culture and media. She wrote this with regards to 1988's Akira, but it's very relevant when speaking of a series like Hunter x Hunter. The series is a coming-of-age story with Gon dealing with the hardships of the world as he grows into adolescence. However, instead of growing and overcoming these woes in a mature manner, Gon's experiences begin to bring him down. The Chimera Ant arc is probably Hunter x Hunter's most widely known and discussed storyline, and with good reason. It's dense, complex, and has some of the series' most bombastic moments. Napier writes, "Despair and a feeling of entrapment are emotions often associated with adolescence, and we get that on full display in this arc. The boys infiltrate a secretive society, they lose their mentor, and Gon begins his journey towards hatred after Kite is attacked by Pito and Killua carries an unconscious Gon to safety." Previous to this, the boys have been praised for their 1 in 10 million aptitude for Nen and combat. Gon in particular has been described as a monster when it comes to his potential and strength. When she speaks of the monstrous adolescent, Napier relates it back to Japan's own cultural identity, as the dominant themes in Japanese cultural self-representation have long been those of uniqueness, isolation, and victimization, hence of a lone nation struggling against the odds. Indeed, while Gon doesn't view himself as much of an outcast usually, in the case of his adventure in East Gorto hunting for Pito, he begins to distance himself emotionally from those around him, and also refuses the reality and gravity of the situation oftentimes. His adamance that Kite has survived the attack from Pito, his refusal to give up in completely hopeless situations, and the glumness that begins to overtake him all point to these darker adolescent emotions beginning to invade Gon's childlike demeanour. A child that has been told from the start of the series that they are exceptional, that they can achieve anything if they just try hard enough, and who possesses an unwavering belief that everything will work out because he says so. What happens when everything that Gon believes to be true is torn apart? Throughout the arc, Gon has been biding his time until he gets to Pito. Killua has felt this shift in his friend and has begun to feel a distance grow between them because of it. When finally confronted with Pito, and then protecting what looks like a helpless girl, Gon's psyche finally snaps. When he witnesses this creature healing someone, this creature he had built up in his head to be pure evil, he can't take it. It just doesn't compute. How can something so evil possess any positive traits, any empathy for another being? Surely that's something reserved for him and his friends, the people he likes. It can't be something the enemy has too, because that's too relatable, too real. If Pito had been devouring Komugi, or hurting her in some way, then Gon would have been justified in killing them. But not now. It wouldn't be right to attack while they're helping another. In fact, it would go against everything their mission stood for. Gon, as we witnessed in earlier episodes, has to have a perfect victory. We saw it in the Hunter exam against Hanzo, on Greed Island against Genthru, and we see it now. Gon can't possibly conceive of Pito having any kind of inner workings or complexity of their own. When this child is presented with situations that are not perfectly black and white to him, he can't handle it. This brings us back to story structure. An extension of the pyramid is the diamond. This is often used in broadcast media to focus the story back down to a local level, to help give the audience perspective. Gon has so far had an extremely broad view of the world that lacks nuance, and when he is forced to acknowledge that his enemy has a personality, that they might be fighting for reasons he himself might deem noble, he refuses to change. Gon refuses to evolve, and instead doubles down on his own hatred and monstrous feelings. Contrary to the hero's journey, Gon gives up everything he has so that he can kill this enemy in front of him. Not for any noble, world-saving reason, but because he wants to kill. He wants to destroy. And he wants to make Pito hurt. Gon literally turns into a monster. A twisted version of himself. The unassuming boy has become the ultimate monstrous adolescent. Unlike so many before him, Gon's transformation isn't heroic or met with a thrilling, cathartic scene. It's sad, grotesque, and unpleasant to watch, to the point where you're left feeling sorry for Pito as they're helplessly massacred. Togashi subverted usual shonen tropes in how he turned Gon from a sweet, fun-loving boy into this thing destroyed by revenge. He truly has become the monstrous adolescent. And with this piece of art, I wanted to show those two sides of Gon, and I think it almost came out like two different pieces. And when I had it finished, I kind of found it weird at first and thought it was quite juxtaposed, but then I kind of like that juxtaposition. So as I said, I've got two versions of it, which I'll show now. So here is sort of the full page with the full colour, and here is just Gon and his evil self, and just the white background. Now this is quite stark looking, and I like that as well. Let me know down in the comments which one you like better, if any. And let me know as well what you thought of our discussion about Gon. Do you think that he turned into a monster by the end of the series, or do you think that he was justified in what he did? Leave a comment, let me know. And if you did enjoy the video, like, subscribe and share, and I'll see you next time.